Professor Coomer here, virtual classroom. We're in the essay number 3. Let's talk about this assignment. So essay number 3 is an extension of essay number 2. So the whole purpose of doing essay 2 was to get you ready for essay 3. The goal of this essay is to read someone else's argument. So I've assigned 2 readings. You're going to pick one of the 2 readings and you are going to do a rhetorical analysis. And so essentially, it's a lot like what you did in essay 2. In essay 2, you gave your opinion on what the author said. You picked out things the author said, and then you gave your opinion. In essay 3, you're not going to give your opinion on what they have to say. You're going to analyze whether or not they made a strong argument for their audience. So in other words, you're going to provide your expert opinion on how well or how poorly this author made his or her argument. Now, you've got some readings from the textbook that I want you to read to get a better understanding of how this works. I also have quite a bit to say in these lectures, so make sure to watch these lectures and always come back to them if you have questions. The essay 3 will consist of the same basic elements as every other essay, okay? So you're going to have an introduction, okay? You're going to have a thesis statement. You're going to have multiple body paragraphs, okay? And then you're going to have a conclusion paragraph, okay? So all of the basics will remain the same. And really, the overall basic structure of essay 3 is very similar to essay 2. So you've already done a similar structure to an essay at this point. In your introduction, you're going to introduce the topic, and you're going to also introduce the article and the author. That has to be introduced in the introduction because it's important for us to understand what it is you're writing about. The whole point of your essay is to write about what someone else wrote. So what we're doing is we're providing that information early on in the introduction. That way it's very clear from the very beginning, this is what I'm writing about. This is what I'm going to tell you about in this essay. It's going to be specifically about what this author wrote, and it was this particular article called whatever article you've chosen. Then you're going to make a thesis statement, and your thesis statement will essentially be a statement with, basically you're going to say whether or not the author made a convincing argument. So did the author make a convincing argument? Well, let's think about that. Now you're going to take a look at some other videos in this series, and you're going to do some readings, and those will describe some elements of what is a convincing argument. But very simply put, a convincing argument is an argument that reaches the audience, okay, the intended audience, and gives that intended audience evidence that the audience will need to believe the argument. So you're going to need to do a lot of things to figure this out. This is going to be a thinking essay. It's not just an essay where you can, okay, I'm just going to kind of write it without thinking about it. With this essay, it's just a given you understand how to write sentences, paragraphs, essays. It's a given that you understand the basics of essay writing at this point in the semester. At this point in the semester, you're going to need to think about somebody else's writing, and you're going to need to say whether or not that person made a convincing argument or not. And in order to do it, you're going to have to figure out by just thinking about it, and I have a video on this later, who is the target audience of this author? And what evidence would that target audience likely need to make a decision, for that audience maybe to change his or her mind on a topic? So you're really going to have to think about this. Now in this essay, your first body paragraph will be a summary of your given reading, okay? Whatever article that you're going to analyze, you can just drop your summary right into that first body paragraph, just like you did on essay 2, okay? And make sure you have your citation at the end with the page range. And of course, all of the other things that a summary should be, that has to be there. And of course, you're going to have your works cited at the end of your essay because you're going to cite your source. Okay, so having said that, the rest of the paragraphs will simply be bringing up some kind of an issue. So maybe the author said this, or the author used this kind of information, or the author used this kind of a tone or attitude toward the topic. You're going to need to really think about what the author did in the article. And you're going to have to say, well, this author is just like me. This author is trying to get his or her audience to believe something. And this author is making decisions that I'm going to analyze. I'm going to pick apart the decisions that the author made. Why did the author decide to bring up this particular fact? Why did the author choose not to bring up this particular fact? You can also comment on what isn't stated. If you think that the author would have made a better argument if the author would have brought up a certain topic, well, you can say that. That can be one of the paragraphs that you write. The goal of this essay is not for you to give your opinion on the issue that the author is writing about. So I don't want to know what you think about whatever issue the author is writing about. That's not important. You are more or less kind of like a coach. Or maybe you're like what I am. Maybe you're the professor. And you see this other person's argument, and what you're doing is you're saying, okay, the author makes this point, and this is the evidence the author uses. I think that the target audience will likely find this evidence to be convincing, and this is why. Okay, and that could be a paragraph. And you can do that for all of your paragraphs, basically. Or maybe you might say the author brought up this point, which probably will offend the audience. So it was a bad idea to bring this up because most readers will be either confused or offended whenever they read this part of the article. So it's really up to you how you want to come at this, but the main thing is that you're going to make some kind of a statement in your thesis statement, some kind of a statement saying whether or not you believe the argument was convincing. Is this something that audiences will likely believe? Or maybe it's a somewhat convincing argument that will probably convince many of the audience members, but it could be better. Well, that's a claim, that's a thesis statement, right? So if you're saying it could be better or it could be more convincing, maybe you'll even add, it could be more convincing if the author brought up more information or provided more, evidence to support what the author was trying to argue. So you really want to think about this going forward. Essentially, you're going to make a claim about the argument, and then you're going to summarize it. Then you're going to bring up, these are things that the author brought up. These are things that I'm going to comment about. Instead of, in essay 2, you said what you thought about it, right? You gave your own opinion about it. In essay 3, it's more of, I think this is what the audience will respond. This is the audience will say this about it. The audience will react this way about it, and this is why. Okay, that's really the biggest shift here. Okay, in order to do this essay, you must understand the article. You have to understand what the article is trying to accomplish. So what are the major claims? What is the major argument? You have to know what the major argument, what is the overall reason why this author wrote this piece. And if you don't know that, you won't be able to do any of this. So you really have to think, what is this author trying to do? What is this author trying to prove to the audience? And what decisions did the author make in this attempt? So how is the author trying to do it, right? Is the author trying to provide a lot of emotional reasons why a person should make a choice? Is the author providing a lot of science? Is the author providing maybe witness details? It depends on what the argument is. But did that author make a convincing argument to his or her intended audience? So this is a thinking essay. This is an essay that you will not be able to do without really understanding the article and really thinking about what essentially is the author trying to prove, how is the author trying to prove it, And will the audience find it convincing? Okay, guys. So there's lots of other things that we're going to be covering in this series. Make sure to do the readings that you'll find in my my Zoom video, and then also in our assigned readings on the syllabus. Guys, get to work. It's time to start.